Hey guys, with another one take review, and today I want to talk about a stupid mistake I made. Actually, because recently, I think as of yesterday, as I'm filming this, and however long ago when you happen to be watching this, I uploaded a review for Weezer's 2014 or 15 album. I don't really remember. Everything Will Be Alright in the End, and I just did that randomly. No planned review there or anything like normal with my older albums. I just randomly select an album and review it, and I just it's just randomized. I don't try to go out of my way to like get hyped for a future album by an artist by reviewing another one of their albums like right before another album or EP drops, and that was exactly this time, and I was completely unaware of the fact that the new Weezer EP, Seasons Spring, was dropping on the exact same day that I uploaded that video. So that was a little awkward, and now I kind of have to review the new Weezer EP. So yeah, Weezer Seasons Spring. Season Spring is the latest release slash EP from Weezer, as well as their first EP in a upcoming four-piece series about, yeah, you guessed it, the four seasons. And well, obviously Spring, this is the first one of the series, and Season Spring is undoubtedly 100% undeniably an EP that Weezer released. There's a fair amount of kind of folk pop, folk rock influence in Spring, which is kind of interesting considering it's one of the few genres with a mainstream appeal that Weezer haven't really touched all that much yet. But it's still mixed in with the same pop rock that the band have just established over the course of kind of the past couple of decades, really. Nonetheless, the jangly kind of style that's presented on songs like the sound of drums mixed with the occasionally acoustic based kind of sound makes for something interesting and at least mildly unique in the band's discography, or at least their discography of recent years. With that being said, I do think the folk influence actually could have been more prominent. I think it would have made for something kind of interesting to see what direction that Weezer went in, but a lot of these kind of start off folkish and then just progress into basic pop rock and power pop. And there's nothing wrong with that, but still I would have liked to have seen them take it a step further. But nonetheless, it's not bad and it's pleasant, at least at the very least pleasant. But at the same time, it could have been a lot more. But with that being said, even still, it's not bad. It's not bad. It sounds fine. And generally speaking, I do think that as much as I like to joke, Weezer haven't been an absolutely atrocious band after Pinkerton or anything like that. Even though Blue Album and Pinkerton are rightfully considered their only two great albums, but outside of the obvious train wrecks that are Pacific Daydream and Death to False Metal, probably they've been okay. They haven't really done anything absolutely horrible. They haven't offended my ears in any way for the most part, at least. But still, it's just a lot of their stuff is just kind of very average in terms of quality. I digress, however. Weezer have taken the old Oscar Wilde quote, to be popular, one must be a mediocrity, way too seriously over the years. The only catch is that it's been at least a fair amount of time since they've been in the full 100% mainstream conscience, even with undeniably successful album sales. And I do think that this EP, Spring, is the first of their albums since OK Human, which actually really wasn't that long ago. It was only last year or the year before, one of the two. That really shows how much untapped potential that Weezer still have to this day, even as much as people like to kind of knock on them in their newer stuff. And the most frustrating part about that is the fact that with all of that untapped potential, the band rarely ever let it show. I'm not saying they're ever going to recapture the magic of the first couple albums of, the Matt Sharp era, but at the same time, I do think they really could achieve something great if they actually just set their minds to it. I mean, there's a couple songs here that are, again, not fantastic, but they're legitimately charming and endearing. Even still, though, about half of this EP is kind of bland and forgettable. Songs like Angels on Vacation are probably some of the worst offenders of that kind of thing, just forgetfulness, or forgettability, I guess I should say, in Weezer's recent years. And I think it's a shame because, again, about half of this is pretty charming and enjoyable enough. Nothing great, but nothing terrible, which is kind of thankful to say the least compared to some of Weezer's other more recent albums. But still, just 10 out of 20 of the minutes of this EP kind of don't really add up to much. Weezer still obviously have a sort of spark in them, even if it's not the same as what was on Buddy Holly, not the same as what was on El Scorcho, not on Across the Sea, or anything like that. It's obviously a different type of spark, but they still have a spark. And why they refuse to use it every album beyond a couple of songs is truly just beyond me, and it makes me want to not say I'm a Weezer fan because it's kind of difficult to like two whole albums by a band, or well, like more like 3 or 4 albums. You know what? No, love 2 albums by a band, like about 4 albums by a band overall, and just have the rest be 2 or 3 good songs at max, and then the rest is just mediocre or worse. It just is one of the most difficult aspects about trying to like this band. Spring is an incredibly simplistic EP in terms of actual composition. I know that's something that'll probably anger a fair amount of people, as it's been a pretty common complaint for the band over time, but I don't think it's ever really been super warranted, and I've never minded it myself. With that being said, there's an undeniable lack of rawness on not only this EP and what I'm sure will be the following 3 EPs in this series, but pretty much all of Weezer's 2010s and even most of their 2000s output. This lack of rawness makes some of the lowlights of the album, especially some of the lyrical lowlights, like the whole Shakespeare Makes Me Happy bit on opening night, all the more standout and all the more cringeworthy, which is a shame because otherwise they would just kind of pass you by and not really affect the listening experience. But unfortunately, here it kind of does because there's nothing to make them not stand out as much. And look, I think people should face facts. The Blue Album and Pinkerton both had songwriting that ranged from decent to kind of cringeworthy, but at the same time, there's always that sense of nerdy, dorky kind of angst that really made them work, and this EP just doesn't have any of that. The result of an album that has neither positive nor negative aspects that affected some of Weezer's most praised music just makes for something that's just pretty decent and listenable, but not utterly horrible either. It just kind of exists. I mean, this is a few notches above Pacific Daydream, but a few worse lyrics and a few more lifeless guitar solos, and the two would have probably been seen as about the same. But as it stands, I don't think it's any worse than what their worst moments are. I don't think it's equal to what their worst moments are. I think it's better than what their worst moments are. But it's certainly not even in the top 5 Weezer releases, and that's saying something because, like I said, they really only have 4 that I like as far as I'm concerned. Overall, Spring is a pretty decent start to the season's EP series, even if I don't think it's anything particularly fantastic. And if I seem negative throughout the majority of this review, which, as I'm looking back on it, I really did, it's not because I didn't enjoy this. I did enjoy this. I thought it was pleasant, but at the same time, I just know that Weezer are capable of making music that is better than this, and that's what truly frustrates me. But even with this being presented in a decent way, it being performed well enough, the writing being, I mean, is kind of god awful as usual, but I mean, we're over 25 years in the Weezer's career. We can't not expect that from them at this point. I just don't think that. I just don't understand how you can continue to make music like this that's just good, decent, fine, okay, it exists, and still have the ability to, on occasion, make something really great. There's a couple songs on OK Human that are great. There's a couple songs on, well, not Van Weezer, because Van Weezer was kind of garbage, but my point is, they're able to make great music, so why they're just relegating themselves to this is beyond me. But with that being said, 3 stars out of 5. It's a decent EP, and it's a decent start to the series, and I'm sure I'll be covering whenever they do the rest of the 3. But until then, yeah, 3 out of 5. And with that being said, that's the end of this review, and I will see you guys in the next one.